Hi, welcome back to our channel. My name is Marian.
And I'm Juliet. And today we're very excited to talk about the process we had in applying to grad school and how we got into MIT and our different experiences. So the process began about like a year and a half, about a year and a half before the program started. And just this kind of started with me identifying like why I wanted to go back to grad school, what I wanted to study, and so kind of honing in like on the fields that I wanted to fill, and then looking for programs, different schools that offered what I was looking for, and I identified 4 schools that were pretty interesting. One of them was MIT, and the good thing with all of these programs and all graduate programs is that on their website they'll list the admission requirements and any deadlines. So I was actually using that as like my timeline for working on things. So what was common between all of them was they all required you to have a GRE, to have done your TOEFL English exam, have letters of recommendation, have your statement of purpose, and have your resume. What was very different from like the program I'm applying that I am in currently is that they needed a portfolio. So this is like visual work, images of your work, and like a bit of background behind your process on this work. And the reason for that is I was entering a design and engineering program, so they needed to show what your skills and processes are like. Yeah.
And how did you create your portfolio? Was it a physical form? Did you have to like send it to school?
Yeah, that's a good point. So for one of the programs, they needed a website. So I made a website, but for the other 3, they needed it in like PDF. Yeah.
It's quite interesting hearing about your process.
Yeah.
Because mine was quite similar to some
Yeah.
extent, but also different at the same time.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned in the previous video, I'm right now in the program of Media, Arts and Sciences.
Yeah.
That's within now the MIT Media Lab, specifically in the lifelong kindergarten group. But now the application process for the Media Lab differs in the sense that they don't require GREs. They do, some groups require a portfolio, but not all of them. So when I talk about research groups, within the MIT Media Lab, there are over like 20 research groups, and each research group works on different specializations. And depending on what you are passionate about, you can apply to each one of them.
Yeah.
In each of these 20 groups, they have their own requirements. And so I would advise that if you're interested in the Media Lab and the work that they do, look to see which one you're interested in. So I remember in my application process, they asked us for a statement of objectives also. So I sent that in with now standard CV. I also had made a website for my portfolio and recommendation letters, and I believe I needed 3 of them. And I remember even for the recommendation letters, please note, look for people ahead of time.
Yeah, that's
it's a struggle because these are people in like big positions. You don't want to be nagging them like a week towards your application deadline, like, hey, can you please write for me a recommendation letter? No, I would advise seek them out the minute you know you want to apply to a school, so that they can work on their recommendation letters, because these are busy people.
Yeah. And it's like it has so much weight that you want to block out like maybe 2 months for that.
Yes.
Like reviewing it with them, like if you can meet them and like walk through it with them, like, hey, explain to them like what you're studying so they can write the letter like to that audience, versus just like a generic, I know Jane, she's great. Like,
yes, they all have application fees.
I mean, the sad thing is like the nice schools cost a lot more. I guess they're trying to like make sure you're just not spamming them.
Yeah. So you have to budget for that.
You have to budget for that. That is true.
Yeah.
And in terms of like how much you need to, like on one side you're budgeting time to apply, and the other side you're budgeting like the cost of applying. So it's like it's really expensive, just to be honest. To just like have that set out early. Like a GRE would cost you $200 just for the test. And so luckily like a friend of ours had done the test before me, so she gave me her material, so like that was great. She gave me like her books and stuff. There's also a lot of online free resources, but that's $200. TOEFL is also another $200. So that's $400. And then
you had to send your results.
Gosh, let me tell you. So that's the other thing is like I had to. So I think it's also just like some of these applications and like maybe our host universities may not have updated us first, but like for most schools you can have your school send in your results. But for like for my undergrad, they actually don't send it. You go there and you get like a courier service. They have a courier service you sign up for, and they'll like mail the documents, because the reason for that is like the school needs to verify that like these grades you're showing, you didn't like cook them up in your backyard. They come from a accredited institution, so they have to come straight from the uni. And so because of that, I had to mail each one of them, and it was so expensive. It was like $100 each, and I was like,
Wow.
I think it's like, make sure you talk about your admissions, because for some of them I was able to hold off sending until I was in, like until I had like feedback.
Yeah, and for me, I didn't have to send in my transcripts. They accepted the scanned document.
It definitely, it's like program to program, school to school. Like schools have different requirements. I think the other gem I found for like the whole application process was like emailing and like staying in close contact with the admissions team. Like they are your like wingmen and women. They have like all the answers you need.
Yeah. They stab them. That's why they're there.
It's true.
They're paid for that.
Yeah, and like for them, they're like, yeah, people are interested in our program. Of course, like we'll set up time to like, so just like don't feel like you need to have like all your answers, like have the most intelligent questions. Like asking even like, hey, can I have like the fee waiver, or like, hey, can you like just asking them anything that comes to mind, just email them. Like that was super helpful. And they're also just like very, it's their job to reach out, so they do enjoy hearing from people. And like, I mean, I'm assuming most of our audience is from, African countries. Like, those aren't people they hear that much from. So it's like, oh, someone from Angola reached out. Amazing. Yeah. And so that, and one thing I did is I also asked them if I could speak to past students, which was really helpful.
I did too. Yeah, it's so helpful.
Super.
The past students will actually be honest and upfront with you and say, hey, maybe consider this and this other program.
Yeah. That is true. That's a really good point. Like in terms of like applying to schools is like, it's like matchmaking. It's not like you beg
That's
it.
a good way of putting it.
Yeah, it's
It's
like,
true.
am I a good fit for this? Are you a good fit for me? Then that's how you get in. And I think it's not, in some ways, like, you have to have like something to show you're bringing value, like, past experience, grades, all that stuff. But like, I think when it comes to deciding, it's always like, are we a good fit for each other? Like,
And so, when it comes to GREs, are you open with sharing what score you got? Because I'm sure I have gotten many questions about
really? No one's asked me.
What's the right GRE
I
score?
think that's a dangerous thing to say, because like,
But there is a mark, like a mark
There is a
which you
mark.
should at least try to obtain when you are applying.
I can't remember what mine was. What is it?
Or what
out
were
of?
you aiming for?
What is it out of?
I
Trying to-
remember.
It was one. It's out of 200.
It's out of 200, yes.
Yeah.
And I remember people talking about like 160.
Yeah, I think, but we had around
Yes.
160 something.
Yeah, 160. I mean, if you get below, like this is not like
It's not
a
like,
concrete
I
mark
don't even
that
remember,
if
so
you
that just
don't
shows,
get
like,
160, then you might as well like lose hope. No.
Yeah.
But if
You
you
have time.
didn't get a good score the first GRE round, you can now do it again in like 3 months.
yeah. The
And
thing-
ETS, I think ETS is the people who organize GREs. Yeah, they're okay with that. Like do it many times.
Yeah, people do it all the time. Like some people do it just so they can go up by 3 points.
Yeah, it's just a gauge,
Yeah.
but actually you can even get below that. In fact, for my
Should we be putting this in the video?
no, I'm being honest, but
Okay, yeah, that's true.
but in fact, my program they didn't care about grades. Let me tell you, I got a second lower at university, so they didn't even have a problem with
Look at you
that.
now.
But look at me now. What? There's one particular year that I didn't do very well, and it's very noticeable. In fact, prior to that, I was advised that if there's anything in the transcripts which actually shows like, like it's very
like
obvious
something
that
happened,
something has happened.
Yes.
Say what it is. If you have extenuating circumstances, maybe you were sick, maybe like personal issues, maybe you're going with at home.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Put that in your personal statement.
Yeah.
It is very important too,
Yeah.
because the
really-
admissions team they'll see it. They'll see there was something going on
That
in
extra
like
information is helpful.
yeah, that extra information is helpful. So when I had my interview with my advisor via Skype. Like he did ask me, he's like, oh, you're very talented. You have done like amazing things outside school, but what happened in this particular year? So I explained to him. He's like, okay. And then he was like, he was very like explicit. He said, for us, we don't care about grades, but we just had to ask so that when they're going back to admission scenes and trying to like say this is the person we want, they can actually like justify why. Like
yeah. And I mean, even on that note, like some programs do care about grades, so it's also good to put it there. Like you can see like grades were fine, and then there's this dip, so you can explain what that dip in your grades was all about. Yeah. The other thing is that, like, well, in part of the process, so you apply, you submit it, huge sigh of relief, because that whole process is like, it's like a project. Like, it's like, that whole process is nothing else you can do.
I was so overwhelmed.
It takes over your life.
It does.
It really does.
I remember sending people, like, my statement of objectives. I had like 10 revisions of that document.
And it's like a one-page document, but it's like that was really stressful.
Yeah,
it was really stressful.
And you need to take your time on it. This is not something you can work like 1 week,
like the
2
weekend
weeks,
before,
3 weeks. No,
you need like months. I'd say like 2 months.
So you submitted your application which month?
End of January, last week of January. But actually by end of January I done all of mine.
End of January. Okay, so that end of January submitted. Then when did you finally get the acceptance that you are now in MIT?
April. But they actually range like around April, May-ish is when you know for all of the programs.
So for me, I submitted early December, and then by March. I think it was March.
It's true. I think it was March.
Yours was
Sorry.
March.
It was somewhere in that. It's been a while.
It's been a while.
Start thinking about that as soon as you've submitted your application. Like look into in-program funding, fellowships that are external, teaching assistant positions, any grants that you can apply for. That is also another like really demanding process. Okay, so my first year was funded through a fellowship that I'm doing, and then I was doing a partial teaching assistant position, which means that I was working with a professor that covered the other half of my tuition and my stipend, like my living expenses here. I also know a lot of my classmates who are mostly US based, either had savings or took a student loan. It's really common in the US to take a student loan.
And so your teaching assistantship covers so you have your teaching assistantship and you have your fellowship that has been able to supplement now for your funding. Yes. And for me in the Media Lab, so we're both students and research assistantships. So we are paid a stipend, and also our tuition is covered at the same time. So we don't really need to look for funding, but I would advise that if you need to seek any external funding, please look early.
And we'll leave like all the links to our programs and kind of anything that we used in the description, so that you can just like find them all there. If you find if you went through a process and found anything useful, please leave it in the comment for somebody to find.
Yes. But in general, please apply. We need more representation. We need more Africans in here. Like the diversity is very poor. We're not even going to lie about that. And it's about just taking chances and believing that you're
bringing something to the table.
Yes, you're bringing something to the table. Don't worry about your background. No matter where you come from, no matter what your grades are, just apply. Not just to MIT, but any international opportunity or graduate program that you're interested in. Give it a chance. Hey, who knows?
Send us an email if you have any like specific questions on our program. Our process. Yeah, thank you so much.